everybody, and welcome to another Sasquatch Secrets. Ooh, we got a good one for you today. Man, I've been reading like crazy. My eyeballs are red. But I got some great guests to help sort it all out. Sort it all out. So, but before I do that, I do want to say hello to everybody in the chat because last couple of shows I've been like just getting right into the show. So who do we got today? Should I go all the way to the beginning and start from the, can I go to the beginning? I don't think I can go all the way to the beginning. But we've got Uncle Bones, Cindy, Donald, Jen, Sandra Popper. Good to see you, Uncle Bones. I said Val. Danny Staten. Greetings from South Carolina. In the house. Good to see you. If I miss you, sorry. Grasshopper is always first thing. Uncle Bones and him, they fight to be the first person to come in and say hi. I love it. Angel. Who else? Eyes in the Woods. So glad you're here because I got something for you, but you got to stay through the whole show before you get your little surprise. So is that it? Is that who we've got so far? You guys are talking a lot. I don't know if I can go all the way to the beginning. Well, we got a lot of people here. So thank you for being here. I do appreciate it. And let's start bringing in my guests for sure. So here we go. Kevin Harder, welcome to the show.
Hey, howdy. Glad
How
to be
are
with
you? Good. I'm so glad you're here to make sense of some of this stuff.
I hope I can be helpful.
I hope
like
so.
I said, I've been looking at some of those charts all day, and they kind of got my brain a little bit a little fuzzy right now. But man, there's a lot of data in that article. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm interrupting your introductions here.
You're absolutely fine. You're good. And next up. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, Nikki. How are you?
Reporting for duty. It's good to see
you. Didn't get me live. You just caught me as I was going out the door. So.
I always do that to him. I send him last minute notice. Hey, come here. I'm gonna do a show. You want to come on? But no, I appreciate it. You know, everybody loves to see a Thomas out there.
Well, I like it when we talk about classic cases, and this is definitely.
Yeah. And I knew that, and I'm like, why didn't I send him a notice like Thursday or Friday? I don't know. I don't know the things I do sometimes. And my last guest. Hello, Joseph. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
Good evening, Joe.
We got quite the group here. Once again, I find myself the guy with the lowest IQ in the room. Awesome.
No, far from that. But I am glad you were able to get your computer going a little bit. And I know you've been having issues, and that can be frustrating.
Yeah.
For sure. But let me move us around a bit and put us our topic for the evening. Zana, the Russian Almasty, or was she? I should have put was she because we know it was a female. I put, it. But we're going to go into her story, her sad story. And at first I thought it really wasn't anything, but there were witness accounts and there's bodies and there's all this other evidence that there really was a story behind Zana. And everywhere I went, all the different articles I was reading pretty much had the same story regurgitated over and over in different articles. So I'm going to read her story to you, and we'll go more into each little piece as we go. No particular question today that I have to answer. It's more of just exploring the data and the information we have about her, that's out today, because it has changed over time. They exhumed her son's body, the head. They got the head and did the testing. Even Sykes came in on it and did some, I think it was spit from ancestors and all that stuff. Anyway,
It kind of muddied the waters.
yeah, it gets crazy, right? The more and more they're trying to find answers. So this is the only illustration that people use for Zana. Zana? How do you guys say it? Zana, I think.
Do you have any idea where that actually came from?
I looked and I searched for where this original photo started out, and I couldn't. It kind of just appeared. I don't know if if it's an eyewitness account, but
I
as we go,
think it's an illustration of what she
Yeah.
supposedly looked like. I don't believe any photographs of Zana were ever taken.
right.
Yeah.
But even her descriptions, which seem to all correlate to these specific features, don't really look like this. So we'll go into that, and as we go on. Abkhazia is where the area that she was in here. So I'm going to read this story here, and I'm kind of going to jump around because some articles had it stated better than others. So we'll go from here. So perhaps the most interesting story about the Almas is the story of Zana. Zana was the female Almas that was captured and tamed by a small community in or near the village of Takina, the Okamachiri district of Abkhazia this is another thing that Thomas and I were just talking about, is that there's issues between the times of when she was actually captured. Because I have article here that says 1880. There's another one here in front of me that says the 1950s.
1950.
1850, sorry, 1850s. And this one says, no, that's when they did the study.
Another one I know of says 1870. Yeah.
Yeah, 1870. So there's a lot of, so we could be anywhere from 1870 to 1880s,
like 18, or even back as far as 1850. I read that date, 1850, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Between 1850 and 1870 seemed to be a strong.
Yeah. Okay, this one here, because they say the Ottoman origins, where the slaves came from in that era, was the 1850s, and that's why they suspected that she was part of that.
Oh, that makes sense.
That slave movement there. So anyway, so this one says 1880s. How she was captured was vague, but it is believed that some local hunters captured her, gagged her, and bound her to a log. She was then traded or sold to a nobleman named Eji Ganaba. At first, she was kept in a cage or small enclosure because of her wild tendencies. Interaction was only for feeding, which was usually just thrown in meat, bones or whatever. It is said that she dug a hole in the ground and slept in it for the first 3 years. Mm-hmm. Over time, she became tamer, and after 3 years, she was moved to a fenced-in enclosure under an awning near a house. She was tethered at first, but then she was let loose to walk around and wander like a trained dog. She never went far from where she received food, and she did not like living indoors and preferred to sleep in the hole in the ground. Her skin was black, and her whole body was covered with reddish black hair. She
Right.
was very tall, broad, and huge breasts and buttocks, with very muscular arms and legs. Zana never learned to speak. She would instead make inarticulate sounds and mutterings. She knew her name and carried out many commands. It was said that she could outrun a horse, swim across a wild Makva river, even when it rose in a violent high tide. She was very strong and could lift in incredible amounts. She took swims year round and preferred to walk naked even in the winter, tearing dresses that she was given into shreds. Because of her strength, she was given many domestic tasks, such as grinding grain into flour, bringing home firewood, hauling water, and to even remove her master's boots. Strangest of all is that she bore many human children. Um, and then it's a little.
By the way, this nobleman was basically a farmer who was a little richer and had a little bit more land than his neighbors. It's not like some nobleman in a castle or anything like that.
Yeah, right. So,
And this, of course, this was before Lenin and basically communism that basically didn't allow you to own anything. So,
right. So next she had. Let me pull up the children because I've got. It says she had. Here we go. 4 children, 4 surviving children. I'm gonna move this. This is the area while I was reading. The Abkhazia is officially a Republic of Abkhazia, is a partially recognized state in South Caucasus on the eastern coast of the Black Sea at the intersection of Eastern Europe and Western Asia. It covers 8,665 square kilometers and has a population of around 245,000.
Asia.
Its capital and largest city is Sukhumi.
Remember, the Volga River is the border. Anything west of the Volga is considered Europe. Anything east of the Volga is considered Asia.
So there you can kind of see where she was found in Okum. What's it called?
Abkhazia.
Yeah. Abkhazia is the main Republic of Abkhazia, because I kept having to listen to it. I kept pushing the little button to teach me how to say that. But the names of the 2 different, the first little dot on the bottom is where she was found, and the second is the town that they took her to, where she was tamed. They call it tamed. They literally call it taming her. Here's a picture of Western Georgia and the area that she was found in like a trench or something. They found her. And these are the Caucasus, where they think that her ancestry actually lived in and around. That's the skull, Kowit's skull, her son. And he was her youngest son, which I'll have all of them up here in a minute.
Quit's on the left, right? And then
yes.
According to the story, her first 2 children died because she would wash them in the cold, icy river water, and they all died. So a bunch of women in the village decided from now on we're going to take the children from her, and that's why they survived. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. They
By the way,
allowed that to happen twice.
Yeah. Also, she did not get along with human females very well.
they were scared of her.
The men after the first 3 years she came to be very fond of, and as a matter of fact, quite often she would jump on you if she liked you. And women, on the other hand, especially if it was a woman paying attention to a man she was interested in, she would literally try to attack. So,
Yeah.
According
So
to the old articles, yeah.
these are just sketches, illustrations based upon skulls of that.
The ones on the right are intended to be Zana, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sketches out there and illustrations about what she could possibly look like.
Zana had a skull shape quite like Neanderthal. I'm telling you. I mean, just by going by the skull, not that picture that you showed earlier. I'm familiar with that picture too. That's the one that always does pop up for some reason, but I don't think that was really her. But that skull that you had, if that was actually her skull, that one with Quit's skull, and if you look at, if this is a drawing of what her skull looked like, a drawing of that skull, if you look at the shape of that, Neanderthals often had they had what was called the occipital bun on the back of their heads. They probably thought a little bit differently than us. But that looks, I'm not saying she's Neanderthal, and I'm not an anthropologist, everybody, but I try to study it as much as possible. But I don't know, man. Whether she's a Sasquatch or, the Almasty couldn't be. I don't think the Almasty. She could be an Almasty.
Yeah, and I don't think Almasty and Sasquatch are probably the same thing.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, there's a lot of reports of Almasty being more like, you said, Neanderthal, more primitive human. Yeah, like they're even down to wearing some furs and using tools and fire.
Right.
Yeah, whether these stories are true, we'll never know.
Right.
These were two more illustrations of her, because she was always described with very long red hair over a dark skin and large breasts that would hang down to her belly.
Just like our crap comics. I'm sorry.
The other one is a clay reproduction of Zana. Oh shoot, I knew I was gonna forget if I didn't write it down.
She got used to the man who was basically her keeper, and she wouldn't leave him. Like this stuff. At first 3 years, she basically had to be chained up, right? According to the story. And then when he had her, she was actually domesticated a little bit. She did farm chores, things around and stuff like that.
She calmed down after.
She did not like the owner's wife at all. Yeah,
the women were afraid of her, but she never harmed children intentionally. It says, of course, she drowned or killed her first two by improperly caring for them.
Well, she was trying to clean them off and stuff like that, and they catch pneumonia and die,
Yeah. But her when her other four were taken away, they were raised normal. They had normal speech. They learning ability was normal, and they, had regular lives with wives and families.
Yeah, they said they couldn't keep her indoors at all because she'd sweat profusely, even in the wintertime. And she was not comfortable, so she had to go back out to the barn or whatever, the shed that her little homemade pit was in. And it got to the point where she'd collect wood and stuff like that and do local chores around the farm.
Right.
But she never learned to speak any. They tried to teach her to speak. They couldn't do it. She never learned a single word. And she'd just make hoot noises and stuff like that. And And let's
see.
Really don't know much about how she died, but she basically stayed on that farm with her owner until she did.
Right.
Yeah.
And
they don't even really know where she was buried.
She was said to have been buried in the family Ganava area. Okay. And then that's where Kowit was buried. And they knew him because he had a proper marker. So the assumption is the grave that was next to him was his mother. What we really didn't know. And that's when, I think it was in 1962 that they went to unearth, where they got all the permissions to go and unearth the bones and try to see if the unknown female next to Kowit was actually Zana or not. Now, the only thing that's a little bit forget about this photo. This photo just kept popping up. And it's Thomas says it's that Mexican girl with
it's a Mexican woman who used to work in the circus down there, and that was in the late 1800s too.
But I could imagine.
Matter of fact, her story is really sad because the man who she was with stuffed her body after she died and kept displaying her.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow. But I could imagine Zana having an appearance hair like that if she had this hair problem, the hypertrichinosis on her, if she was completely hairy. And
she had that, she was a woman I can't remember the name, it's that rare affliction where hair grows all over the body.
Hypertrichinosis.
Yeah. And she was human though. She was completely human.
Yeah. So this is Kowit. This is her youngest son. Okay. And this is Kodsan Hanar, which is the daughter. And these are some other photos that I had found. Some of them were in Russian, so I was having to try to translate some of this. But there's listed the names of the 4 surviving children. Zahanda, Kodsanahar, Gamza, and then Kowit. And we know Kowit died in 1954. He was around 65 or 70 years old. They don't have a birth date for him, which I found it. Maybe somebody has one somewhere. But I couldn't. All I know is from the photo on the right with Kowit and his sister, and that the 3 ladies the 2 ladies and the man on the bottom are his children, Kowit's children.
Well, if you subtract 70 years from 1954, he was born in 1884.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Which it would be around the time frame after if it was 1870 or 1850, she would be in childbearing years in 1884 and before.
I wish I had time to have gotten that guy next to Kowit on the left-hand side. I never got his name. I don't know if that's his brother or not, but I think that's one of his brothers.
Or maybe a son?
It could be the oldest son.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, there's a resemblance there, in a way. Yeah.
Well, if he's the oldest boy, he'd have to be older than Kowit. And that old picture of Kowit, he wasn't 70 years old when that shot was taken, obviously.
Right.
Or he was a very young-looking 70.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know because I can't read Russian.
That's the biggest problem with this case. There's no proper records of anything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then I came into this one, and it was also in Russian or Abkhazia. I don't know. So I had a translator, and I was using the Russian translator to come up with, that was Risa Chivitovina, Kvitovina is how it's pronounced it, and which would have been Raya. So, and then we have how his name translated was weird. It said son of Hawit, which would have been Kavit. It's all pronunciation, and how you would say these.
In other words, she would be a granddaughter of Zana, not a daughter.
Yes, she's the granddaughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was actually, Kavit was married twice. So he has, I believe, children from both of those marriages.
And that's Quit's skull at the bottom.
Yes. And holding that skull, I was like, well, who's holding the skull? Who is that person? And I did find that, and that is our very own Igor Merstav.
Oh, but it says Zana.
Oh, I know. I made a mistake. That's my mistake.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I did that.
And this was long before he started having conversation with Sasquatch on phone on stage.
Yeah, Sasquatch phone home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like.
Yeah, that was way before cell phones at all.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested to see the DNA results if they could do DNA. I mean, way back when they didn't have DNA stuff, but nowadays, has anybody tried any of that, Nikki? Did you find any of that? I'd just be interested. That's all.
Of the what?
Of the DNA.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
I didn't have any pictures of Sykes actually dealing with his testing, okay, because he got involved by going and getting saliva samples from the ancestors, that were alive.
Oh, you mean? Oh, okay.
And to do comparisons, okay. And it says that, of course, he was a genetics in the University of Oxford and analyzed the DNA of Zana's descendants and discovered, of course, that they were from West African genes.
The mitochondrial DNA, that is.
Yeah.
And that's where the theory of the Ottoman incursion in the South Caucasus area around 1855.
50. Yeah.
50. And the Ottomans had slaves and brought a lot of them with them. And of course, most of the local people had never seen a African or a black person before in their lives. Mm-hmm. So that was the theory that maybe Zana was an escaped, gone wild Ottoman slave. Of course, the Ottomans made slaves of everybody that wasn't not just black people. Anybody
that weren't just them.
They made slaves. Yeah.
And that's actually what Sykes had theorized as well, is that the ancestors may have lived within those Caucasus Mountains for generations, since the 1850s.
Yeah, but to me, the idea, if the stories of her physical abilities are true, that would rule out any human of African or Caucasian descent, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Nobody can outrun a horse at full gallop.
I think that's a bit of an exaggeration.
They did say that she was 6'6", 6'6", right?
Well, it's pretty tall. Is that? Yeah, but wow.
Pretty tall. And that she had weird looking legs that they didn't appear to be like a normal human's legs.
And she had abnormally strong, well, they would consider it abnormally strong in those days, female sexual drives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't read that one. But anyway, Sykes actually was able to obtain tooth from Kuwait to use as his to help with the sampling. Okay, so that's all of
I
this.
I think he was able to get mitochondrial DNA from that tooth. But there was some question about whether his results were the result of contamination or not.
Zana's. Okay. Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly from what I read, his initial mitochondrial DNA finding was not consistent with her being an Almasty. And here's part of that.
Yeah.
That's not the Sykes data.
No, this one's not the Sykes one. This one is the Igor Burshchev's original genomic origin of Zana.
Yeah, he is listed as one of the authors.
Is he really?
Of the paper, yeah.
The first one?
Of the most recent one.
Here.
Of this one, I believe.
Yeah, this is this other one here. The unexplained one.
But I really don't believe that he. There was some. I'm pretty sure that there was some kind of pressure going on there, because I'm sure that he does not agree with their conclusions, or at least I mean, I don't. Of course, Igor's credibility is a changing thing lately, and I don't know how many people still think of him as credible at all, but
yeah.
But
yeah, Sasquatch on the phone kind of did it for me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But so what I have here is that the Soviet scientists visited the region in 1962 to gather descriptions and accounts from the elders living in the village of Takina, who still recall her. They still remember her, and the locals described her as being part human and part animal. She was 2 meters tall, dark skin, covered with the hair, blah blah blah. But she could lift a 50-kilogram sack of flour with one hand. And again, the claim was that she could outrun a horse.
And many other feats of strength mentioned.
Yeah.
There's so much. That's the kind of stuff that I call ethnographic detail. Like the anthropologist, ethnographer person goes there to try to get the full story, the whole story, and talks to almost everybody and includes all this detail and the whole picture of it, replete with all these details, adds up to a compelling kind of assessment, but that's the ideal anyway of ethnographic research. And I'm trained in ethnographic stuff, and I'm partial to that way of working, and I have respect for my fellow social scientists, and it's just really hard for me to believe that all of those people who investigated it got it so completely wrong.
Well, Zana is like so many other Soviet or Russian stories. We tend to look at the Sasquatch, the Jocko story of 1884, the catcher Jocko. There's one time we actually had one, and it slid through our fingers. The Russians seem to have 6 or 8 of these type stories, and Zana is one of them. And some of them aren't that long ago. There's another one, I don't remember the details just offhand, but was Almasty sightings in the north of the country, not too far from St. Petersburg, where a government official came to investigate. The government official didn't even bring a camera with them, let alone a piece of paper and a pencil. And they supposedly had this body in the back of the trunk of a car. He said he saw it, but for somehow the body just was lost, and no one knows anything about it now. And no one thought to take a picture. Blah blah blah. The Russians have about 5 or 6 of these, all with the same frustrating end.
The grave of Kawit was identified in 1971. After several attempts to locate Zana's burial site, the remains of an anonymous female was discovered in the Genebaz family cemetery, leading to speculation that may have belonged to Zana herself. To overcome limitations of previous DNA analysis and the possible ambiguities, we sequenced the genomes of both the unknown female and Kowit, performed genome-wide analysis to explore the generic ancestry and kinship relations. And then it gets all into population genetics and the results of discussions and
yeah, that population genetics section is kind of challenging, or I found it challenging to follow.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I was trying to follow up on the research or the methods of analysis that they're discussed in that section.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to sort out for my own understanding which aspects of this analysis depend upon recovered nuclear DNA, and which of it depends on the mitochondrial DNA, which is much easier to recover, and mitochondrial DNA was basically the one molecule that they were working with for a long time while the science is still developing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to follow up on that, and the analysis that they talk about with the nuclear material, and they never really do identify, like they don't identify specific genes. So to me, the presentation is much more vague concerning the nuclear material. With the mitochondria, they give you the haplogroup. They identify exactly what subset of human ancestry is indicated. But with the nuclear material, it's much more vague to me, and the methods of analysis are confusing. The main one that they talk about there is what do they call it? The principal component analysis. Does that sound right? Principal component analysis. It's not connected with that chart, but with one of the later ones, I think. Mm-hmm. Because this chart is actually all about the mitochondrial DNA.
Yeah.
Those are the haplogroups, the mitochondrial haplogroups.
What?
Oh, I just want to ask Kevin a question there.
Yeah, go.
Is that is that just a fancy way of saying the problem is that most of the samples they're using of her came from her descendants, not her herself? So there's probably a lot of human mixed in with that as well, correct?
Yes, that's one problem. Although, going back to the nuclear question, the mitochondrial DNA is should be consistent, from one generation to the next, and it sounds like they have pretty good identification of the mitochondrial DNA, and it seems to be consistent between Quit's remains and the ones that are suspected to be Zana. And so that all seems pretty solid. Like they have her identified with this African haplogroup, but they speak of it as they speak of it with greater certainty than I think is appropriate, because they don't give any discussion to the question of gene flow and possibilities of interspecific hybridizing, which was the subject of the essay that I wrote about in Relic Hominoid Inquiry a while ago. And basically the thesis that I developed there about mitochondrial introgression, I think could apply here. The main question I still have is about the nuclear sequences that they recovered and their methods of analysis for those. Because so anyway, following up on that PCA thing, or the principal components analysis of the DNA that they recovered, and I was reading more into that, and there's a very recent paper from 2022 about the use of this technique, the use of this method, principal component analysis in population genetics, and how unreliable it is. and how really hundreds of thousands of studies are going to need to be reevaluated with new problems in mind, because this method of analysis is really one of those things where you can make the data end up reflecting anything you want it to. That's the critique that I read about it. I can't explain all the details, but so regarding the nuclear material, the methods of analysis seem to be in question right now. And then,
is that a problem with the DNA itself, or their methods of extraction?
I think it's that I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure. They're relying on this PCA method, the principal component analysis, uses what they call. Let me get this term right. I was looking for the article. I closed everything, so I could just get myself sorted out here. But I think they called it low. Shucks. That it uses less data than other techniques. And I'm going to have to look this up and try to remember what the exact term is. But so anyway, this technique that they've developed uses less data, because a certain amount of it is irrelevant to the question that you're trying to answer. Often with genetic data, it's huge. So anyway, it uses less data. It tries to make greater inferences using less data. And the method itself is apparently seriously biased. And I'm not well versed in it enough to explain why. I'm just repeating the article that I read earlier today. It's a 2022 article about the use of principal component analysis in population genetics. So anyway, so there's a question about the validity of the nuclear analysis, and the mitochondrial DNA seems to be much better understood, and everybody agrees that it's of West African human derivation. But they don't consider the possibility of gene flow, of interspecific gene flow. So in other words, the species, they're kind of assuming, in my mind, they're assuming what they're trying to prove. In other words, they're saying there is no such thing as the Almasty, and therefore Zana was some misunderstood Homo sapien.
Just another person
who was exotic, and the local people didn't understand and made her into some kind of mythic, monstrous creature. But to me, the ethnographic discussion, the details are so consistent, and there's so many people, so many witnesses. And I just don't believe that all those people were totally wrong about the idea that she was not of our species. I just can't believe that all those people were wrong. And so if they were, there's two possibilities. If Zana is not of our species, she could still have human mitochondrial DNA, and that I would argue that would most likely be the result of this process called mitochondrial introgression. And that could account for the mitochondrial aspect of the data, without destroying the Almasty, without making the Almasty mere myth. It could be a real. If you approach it as a separate species, then the data would make sense in the scenario of mitochondrial introgression. If you aren't willing to consider the possibility that she was a different species, then you're only left with one option, and that's that she was some kind of, somehow got to that part of the world and was captured by people that didn't speak her language, and maybe she had all these congenital abnormalities and difficulties and all of that. I don't know. It sounds.
You think it's a little far-fetched to assume all those things?
It sounds difficult to believe all the way around, either way you look at it.
Yeah. There's even been, like, most of the stuff on Zana, like you said, which I read about 20, 25 years ago. I mean, there was even some controversy whether Quint was actually Zana's offspring.
Hmm.
Some people said he wasn't. You know, and all depends on who you talk to.
I think this latest publication does supply additional evidence for that identity.
Yeah.
But I think they did confirm.
Yeah.
I think
They
the
did confirm that.
the late Robert Sykes' explanation of her being a lost slave from the Ottomans would be a logical explanation as to why they didn't recognize her and why they thought she was so strange. Probably never seen a black woman from Africa in their lives, you know, and she's living wild in the mountains, doesn't know the language, you know. Maybe she's very large physically, I don't know.
But the way they described her doesn't seem to match.
Oh, it doesn't.
Well,
like body covered in hair, reddish hair. Yeah.
She could have been susceptible to being on the spectrum, you know, possibly higher on that spectrum, because she was abnormally tall. She had hypertrichinosis. She already had something genetically wrong with her. So she could have had these other, just, you know, other defects that wouldn't allow her to act normal or to have speech.
But she was such a hardy specimen too. I mean, she was healthy, you know. Either she is deeply diseased and riddled with genetic abnormalities, or she's a healthy specimen and able to do all these feats of strength. And it just seems like the old story seems like the most likely one to me. But I don't have the detail and the technical expertise necessary to rebut this. What they talk about in here with the PCA analysis of the nuclear stuff. But it bothers me. It bothers me quite a bit that they don't discuss the possibility at all of interspecific gene flow, which is a big deal in human origins. You know, it's growing in influence by the day in the study of human origins.
But at this point, the point where then they were doing this study, wasn't their number one question is just to identify an area that she may have belonged to, right?
Right. Well, they're saying that she is descended directly from those
Eastern
that ethnic
Africa.
group in Africa, and what I'm trying to say is that it could be the case that it's really only her mitochondria that are descended from that African.
So she wasn't like, I mean, they broke it down to the Dinka of the Eastern Africa and the Yoruba African group, but not but an older ancestry.
Right, not a current.
Not a
contemporary living group. Yeah.
Yes.
And the area where she was captured and where she raised is right in the middle of Russian Almasty country. I mean, that's where a lot of the reports come from.
Yeah, it's a huge tradition extending back a long time.
I can't remember because, again, it's been 20 years since I watched it. There was a documentary film that featured Peter Burns in the late 1970s. I can't remember what it was called. Wild Men of North America. I can't even remember what it's called. But there was a British professor, a woman who was interviewed for it, and they did reenactments of the Zana story, and they did a pretty good job on it.
I didn't know that.
The title of that documentary, I've got it here on old VHS tape somewhere, and I just cannot remember what it was called. It was basically featuring Peter Byrne, though, back in the day. And they did a full reenactment of the Zana story. And it was, and this English anthropologist who seemed to know all the details of her history, alleged history, she seemed to be quite knowledgeable in the whole story. Even the fact that Zana loved her keeper's homemade liquor and would drink it with a relish after she got used to it. Made her a little more aggressive too at times.
And she preferred the company of water buffalo.
Yes. Part of the thing that intrigues me really, and it all goes into because I'm interested in this kind of thing, although some of it, like, I mean, I was really trying to follow you, Kevin, on the DNA stuff because that's tough for me, but I'm learning about it and I understand, you know, nuclear and mitochondrial and that and gene flow, and not as well probably as you do, but I'm getting there. I'm trying to get there, but
it's a constant learning process.
Is that, you know, there were indigenous people in Russia. There's a tribe that actually lives, I forgot their name, but they were associated with that whole Dyatlov Pass story too. And I can't remember the name of the peoples that lived there. I mean, it's like they were, you know, but so there were like, and people, I don't know how many people realize that or think about that there were actually indigenous people there, much like there was indigenous people here when Europeans came here. So, yeah. I mean, maybe she was descended from one of those. And it also makes me wonder, seeing that skull, I don't know, these stories in Russia about the Almas, and what are the chances, and this is just me hypothesizing or whatever. That's why I was interested in DNA, because we know that humans, well, a certain set of us outside sub-Saharan Africa have a certain amount of Neanderthal DNA. Still,
well, I thought Neanderthal was completely separate from our ancestors, so they were a different form of human. Yeah,
I have about 0.2 or something like that. Molly actually has more of a percentage Neanderthal, and I was jealous actually. So I'm wondering, you know, what are the chances that, you know, there were some late surviving maybe Neanderthals, or, you know, I know science wants to stick to we're the only living hominin left on the planet. There can only be one. But what are the chances, man? I mean, that she could have been an Almas, like you were saying, and the Almas were something that were akin to the Neanderthal descent, or maybe even Homo heidelbergensis. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, several things about her suggest that she was well adapted to a colder climate, and that conflicts with the whole African origin thing. Yeah. Unless it's only her mitochondria that are African origin, and then, you know, then that would not present a problem.
Right. Well, that area in the Caucasus, oh, it's bitterly cold in the winter, but it's brutally hot in the summer. Yeah.
So, Kevin, explain this section of this report.
This is the part that I was talking about, the principal component analysis, and I honestly don't understand how it works. That's why I was reading more up on this method. And the critique that I read about it was that you can, you know, it enables you to produce a nice color-coded chart of all these different possible factors. I don't know. It made it sound like there's too much bias in the method, so that you can actually make the data appear to support whatever your thesis is. It's a pretty thorough and devastating critique of this method, but I don't know enough about how it works to be any more specific than that.
Right.
But I mean, the article is really the article I was just referring to is pretty interesting. Let me see if I can find that here.
Well, if you find it, you can send it to me and I'll put it down in the description. All the articles and information that I'm sharing, it should be down in the description. I think I'm missing like one in there. And if Kevin gets me that one, I'll put it down in the description too, if you guys are interested in seeing where I'm reading from or getting any of this information you can see that for yourself. Now, also in this report, it said that I didn't quite understand, and maybe Kevin, you can tell me. It says near the end, it says to formally test the possible Neanderthal integration into Zana's genome, we conducted D statistics in the form of, and then it says test population Zana, Altinea, and chimpanzee.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I read that a number of times, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly. I don't know what the D.
They tested against these particular Neanderthals. I don't know.
Right. I mean, they're selecting specific genomic data to compare with to see if but I don't know if. See, the thing about the mitochondrial integration thing that I've been talking about is the way that works is really from unidirectional interbreeding. So in other words, it's usually if it's between humans and Neanderthals, the assumption is that the Neanderthals are stronger and meaner and more fearsome competitors, and so it's almost always going to be a case of Neanderthal abducting a human woman and taking her back to his clan, and the offspring will be raised as part of the Neanderthal group, and that's the beginnings of mitochondrial integration. If that female has female offspring and they're raised in the Neanderthal population and they live as Neanderthals, that's a potential beginning of mitochondrial integration. Like if that makes sense. But so Zana Zana could be the result of that process. I mean, it really just depends on how much credibility you give the idea that she was a separate species or not. And the article really kind of makes me, it's kind of sad the way that they talk about social scientists being so completely, so completely ignorant about cultural differences and ethnic differences, and they blame so much of the thing on prejudice of the past, but I'm not sure it could still be affected by the prejudices of the present moment, especially with the development of DNA technologies and its relationship to other fields. The DNA is so powerful, and it seems like the authors of this article are just completely drunk with power about what DNA can explain, and they express it with greater certainty than is really appropriate.
Yeah, and keep in mind that in those days when the Ottomans went through the area, they probably not only brought slaves with them, but they turned most of the local people into slaves too. That was the price of conquest. Just like a couple of centuries before, that whole area was devastated by the Mongol hordes when they went through the area. I mean,
it's a historical crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Prehistoric crossroads.
And we're talking about people who are probably very religious, very simple, living off the land, farmers, hunter-gatherers, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So something to be this unique and different.
They would know about it.
Yeah.
I mean, or they would know the difference.
Yeah.
I mean,
she stood out a great deal.
As much as I respect science and all the new powerful techniques of science, it's emerging technology still, and they're working out the bugs, not just not only in the techniques, but in the best way to interpret the results of these.
Right. Right.
I'm afraid the Zana's story, at least as far as I can tell, in my opinion, is doomed to be another classic tale unless that someday they find out where her actual grave is and they get a look at her actual skeletal remains, you know.
So you don't believe that the woman that was buried next to Kawit was Zana?
We don't know if it was or not. I have the
Well,
feeling.
I thought they did. I thought that was the finding.
Okay, well, they seem to be obsessed with Quit's remains and taking all kind of pictures, but I don't see any pictures of the woman next door. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was confusing.
After several attempts to locate Zana's burial site, the remains of the anonymous female was discovered in Geneba's family cemetery, leading to speculation that it belonged to Zana herself. Now, they performed a genome-wide analysis to explore the genetic ancestry and kinship relations, which allowed us to shed light on Zana's story based on genome-wide data. It was sequenced with genomes of both the unknown female and Kawit. And
I remember the term I was trying to think of earlier. That the genome-wide data that they're talking about there is shucks. I'm sorry. I had the term and now it's gone out of my brain the minute I tell you I want to say it.
There was something else I had read in regards to the comparison of the two.
Low content or not low content, low something, low.
South Caucasus.
Anyway, that's the method that uses where they're trying to use less data to get more inferences out of it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to derail your explanation.
No, you're okay because it's just so much information. It's hard to know what topic we're gonna hit on. I know I read it here, and it's in this report that's called "The Genomic Origins of Zana of Abkhazia," and that's listed down below in the thing.
Well, I had a long conversation in 2003 with oh God, not Igor, Dmitry Baranov, because we were going down to the Willow Creek together. We were talking about Zana. He mentioned a lot about, because he was part of those expeditions in the early 1960s. He told me that, yeah, they looked quit, but they still didn't know where Zana was buried. All they heard was rumors.
I know in one of these 12 articles I have sitting here in front of me, that one of them had said that they had found the bond, that they were both it's maternal DNA.
Yes.
I think it was maternal DNA. Yeah, that they had. But I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, I think it is part of this
mitochondrial DNA.
Yeah. But would you not agree though that the results indicated? Okay, it says here, Neanderthal admixture only for populations of Northern African and non-African populations, which is in line with Zana's genetic proximity with sub-Saharan groups identified based on cluster analysis. It also says in conclusion that the unknown female buried in Geneba's family cemetery was Zana herself. That's where I was looking for. It's right here.
Okay, so they determined that it was her.
If you believe in this analysis, okay, what they determined.
And that could be accurate whether she is an Almasty or a human.
Right.
So what year was that conclusion that was Zana?
It was Zana in if they're saying that the lady buried next to Kawit, was his mother. And everybody said, but there's still that his mother. And they proved that it is a mother-son buried next to each other. Right? Because there's always suspicion. Is that really Zana? Well, the woman buried next to Kawit is his mom.
Well, I'm willing to accept that it probably was. I mean, probably
Well,
was.
we know it's in the Ganaba cemetery, right in their little plot. So why else?
I mean, if she was what they described, and if that's a picture of her skull,
right?
earlier,
Yeah, because there's
then
eyewitnesses.
I can buy that was Zana's skull.
Right.
I thought they said that her skull was was partially crushed.
I don't know about that.
Mm.
I was not aware up until this moment that they actually had found a skull of her or any bones of her.
Well, I've always been on the assumption they were still debating whether Quit was actually Zana's son. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that they were able to pretty well definitively figure out, that they are mother and son.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they say that the genome-wide data to put an end to the accounts of her as anything but a human woman is what. But this, at the end, this report is all about, they just wanted to say that she is just a woman. She's just a sub-Saharan woman, and that somehow it did become a slave and was over there in the Caucasus, and she was maybe not of mental soundness, and she was a giant in herself, So I don't know.
Yeah, it's the genome-wide data is the mysterious thing to me right now.
Right.
The definitive genome-wide data, and the word I was trying to think of is low coverage whole genome analysis. Yeah, low coverage whole genome analysis. Question about whether that is a reliable method of analysis, and it seems like a nice name.
Well, on a note, ethically, she was captured in a forest. Zana was deprived of her basic human rights. She was treated as a slave. She was kept in captivity. She was forced to have sexual relations with several men in the whole area.
Now hold it.
Hold
it. Okay, first of all, human rights in the 1850s in Russia. Yeah, okay. A slave, well, they did keep her chained up for the first 3 years, but after a while, it was almost like she just hung around on her own free will. And as for rape, hell, she did. It seems to me like a lot of the time she was the aggressor in that department rather than the other way around. And what they were saying.
They couldn't fight her off. That's what you're saying, Thomas?
Well, I don't know the details, and if she looked like that drawing, she'd scare the hell out of me. I'll tell you that.
Right.
And human males it's a one repeated fact in a lot of the story was after she had been domesticated somewhat, her attitude towards human males was totally different than her attitude towards human females. The human females, she was absolutely hostile.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. To men, it all depends if she liked them or not.
Yeah. So this picture right here is a photo of Afro-Abkhazinian family from the Caucasus area. This is no relation to her. It's just a family photo I found that actually had a label saying they were Afro-Abkhazian.
Right. And they're sometimes also known as African Caucasians.
Yeah, African Caucasians. And that photo was taken in 1914. This is just some hypertrichinosis.
Mm-hmm.
And they've known about it for many years, and it's genetic, and can be passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw that in just for Joe.
Well, I have to say this, because I just have to. The fact about Zana being, she's human. Well, yeah, I mean, totally possible that she's, I have to remind people that there were lots of human species in history. And there's very good evidence pointing to the fact that there was pretty much a big boink fest going on over between different species. Neanderthals, Homo heidelbergensis, Denisovans.
Well, what isn't one of the most popular theories? One of the most popular theories was,
to be human just means you're in the Homo genus.
Yeah. Well, isn't one of the most popular theories was Cro-Magnon, our ancestor, basically bred Neanderthal out of existence.
That could have been a part of it. Yeah. Pretty much absorbed. So there really wasn't that many. Neanderthal population was never, they were around for about 500,000 years, and their population never really was that large. So it probably wasn't hard once Homo sapiens started, and that is what they refer to as anatomically modern Homo sapiens.
Cro-Magnon, yeah.
Yep, and so probably once they started coming over or into that area, probably wasn't that hard to absorb them basically into the population. And I mean, it's obvious. I mean, that's what part of what happened, at least, or else none of us would have any trace of Neanderthal in us.
Yeah, that is one current theory about what happened. About the disappearance of the Neanderthals is that we just outbred them, or just absorbed them, and they still live on in scattered fragments of DNA.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe there is a remaining population somewhere over there in Russia.
That's not hard for me to believe, really.
Well, considering I had an encounter with something that was freaking 7.5 foot tall in the forest 3 years ago, I'm willing to accept that, hey, there could be remaining bands of other relic hominins still existing that science refuses to look at or look into.
You look at the history of Almasty.
I think that we're the only ones left.
Yeah, and you look at the history of Almasty encounters and sightings, in Mongolia and Georgia, the Caucasus, and up north of, in around St. Petersburg in that area. It does seem to me a more primitive human type description than the Sasquatch, which is more just a higher primate, whereas this seems to have some more intelligence to it, like they do use fire and primitive tools and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, here's Lucy.
There's Lucy. What they think she
Australopithecus afarensis. She, this one was in, these are just all creations, of what they.
I believe that was from
an artist's rendition.
Yeah, artist renditions. This is Littlefoot from 1995. Also Australopithecus. Look at that skull, man. Oh my God.
That brow ridge, man.
Look at that. That's huge.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been some suggestion that bipedalism was actually a lot more common than we originally thought.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking the old theory about that, Thomas, where they didn't start that began when they came down to the ground because standing up was tough. Now there's been another one that actually bipedalism developed in the trees while ancestors were still in the trees. That's where bipedalism actually started.
Yeah, like from brachiation to bipedalism, like from swinging under the branches
To walking
on two legs.
Yeah.
Like so the transition was like holding the branch above your head, and when you finally run out of branches, you're walking on your feet.
So Amon Chris asked, do we know what the color of Neanderthal skin is? Wouldn't be any way to know.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
given from what I understand, you can only hypothesize about that because we can find skeletons, but we don't find any frozen Neanderthals like we do mammoths and stuff, right? So, but given the environment and stuff, I've read where I would rather say they were probably fairly light-skinned. Some of them even had red hair. So, and they know that from the DNA and, the different genomic stuff about them that they were redheaded. So, yeah.
Here's Pithecanthropus. How do you say it? Pithecanthropus.
Yeah, you said it right.
What a likeness would look like, and another rendition of Australopithecus. And then we have Artie.
Ardipithecus ramidus, yeah.
Yeah, who was found in 2009 in Ethiopia. So this is 1,000,000 years older than the famous Lucy that I just showed you.
Yeah, and when Leakey found Lucy, that proved that human or human-like creatures were on this planet way earlier than we originally thought before her discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So now they got something that's what, 1,000,000 years even older than her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're learning all the time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It only takes one little jawbone or, some piece of the skull to say, "Oh, this is something different."
A lot of people are under the impression that we don't like, for example, Lucy. They always say, well, her skeleton, that's only a partial skeleton. People that are opponents of the theory or whatever, they don't understand. She's not the only Australopithecus specimen that they have more complete skeletons of other Australopithecus afarensis. So there's a lot more fossil evidence than some people think.
Mm-hmm.
So, Thomas, what is your whole opinion about Igor being involved with this whole Zana thing?
I have no problem because Igor was quite logical in his younger years. He went nuts later.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I don't know any of the other.
Put it this way: in the late 1990s, we couldn't understand why Rennie had lost all patience with the Russians. Now we know. Okay, so they all had some. I mean, when I met Dmitri and Baranov, what a intelligent man, but God darn, so gullible. I mean, he was right into the Carter Koi farm. He thought that story, and so did Igor. He was right into that one too. He thought it was definitely, and I'm only expressing my opinion. It was a load of crap. The whole Carter Koi farm thing. That woman in Tennessee who had Sasquatch coming to her back door and she was feeding garlic and stuff and had names for them all and even had their language down. And she never took a single photograph of any of them, but she did take a picture of a stick it dropped. Yeah. And then she sold the farm and then moved to another farm and then tried to claim they followed her to the new farm. I mean, come on.
I recall a story.
Yeah. And I really had I had some experience with Igor up here in BC because he got involved with a guy named Randy Brisson, who I personally caught hoaxing a couple of times. But Igor seemed to be the common sense one of that group, and he wasn't falling for what they were trying to tell him. But what did it for Igor for me was when he said he was talking to Sasquatch on a cell phone on the stage on a conference. I said, oh, man, you've got to be joking.
That's what I refer to as a jumping the shark moment.
Yeah.
That's old Happy Days. Right? But
yeah.
Well, it's a lot. I thought it had a lot of good information in this 18-pager here.
But Igor and the that whole group in Moscow, hominology, they call themselves.
Yeah.
Who really went against the grain. They basically operated against the government's will, but the government really never had a real good excuse to shut them down. But they irritated the authorities of Moscow a lot with just their interest in saying they did do expeditions down in the Caucasus to look in the Almasty back in the 60s and 70s. They did try to find Zana. Maybe they did find her. I don't know. You know, they definitely found the other fellow, the son. But then there was debate: was he really Zana's son or not? Blah blah blah. Some say yes, some say no. You know.
Okay, so Kevin, final thoughts. What was Zana?
You just asked me that.
I think Zana was what they traditionally referred to as an Almasty or an Almas. Somebody needs to straighten me out on the difference between those two terms, though, Almas and Almasty.
They're interchangeable, Almas or Almasty. It's the same, basically. It's the same thing. It's depending on what region you're in, I guess. Is
kind of like Canada Sasquatch and the United States Bigfoot. Two names for the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's probably what she was. But I understand there is, it's not conclusively shown yet. Well, actually, the article we've been talking about claimed that to show conclusively that she was Homo sapien. I don't think it's that conclusive. I don't think it's that certain. But I think it will be. I think it will become clear in time as genetics advances and as they get better at interpreting all of these powerful data generating tools. So I don't know that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead if you had more.
No, that's best I can offer.
Okay. How about you, Thomas?
I like to think that Zana was probably an Almasty. I just because if the stories are true and her physical abilities, though, that was set back a bit when the late Professor Sykes came up with his escaped slave theory from the Ottomans. That would make sense in some ways with the DNA showing West Africa. But again, and you can understand how local people at that time and that era would be completely taken aback by her presence at that time. But the description of her, I mean, it basically fits the description of everything that we've heard on all the cases in the long history of what Almasty does and how it acts and what they look like. Yeah.
Even something like the washing the newborns in the cold mountain stream, and harming them in that way. I mean, she was obviously cold adapted, and that practice, is probably not harmful to their non-hybrid offspring. And another interesting thing about that is the studies of feral children. If children are this, I don't understand how it's an epigenetic thing. It's a feedback mechanism somehow, but sometimes feral children do actually grow extra hair. They grow more. They grow a full coat of hair, or more hair than normal. which suggests that there could be developmental pathways going on early, in very early development, and the environmental conditions that you're exposed to could make a huge difference in your personal development and how your physical being develops. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. Sorry to jump in there with that weird thing at the end.
You're good. You're good. How about you, Joe? What do you think?
Well, not being an expert in anything, biology especially, and that kind of stuff, but I can accept that, and I'm probably sure that, due to the mitochondrial DNA, yeah, she's human, but what kind of human? I mean,
African.
Yeah, I mean, there could be that, but what is there more to it? Because there's an explanation for the shape of that skull and where that shape of that skull comes from. So, yeah, but so that's not saying that these Almas, or what they referred to as the Almas or Almasty, weren't a human species. Like I said, there was a lot of different human species in the world at one time. So yeah, I mean, I can accept that maybe she was an Almas.
Yeah.
Wow.
But right now, the way it is, I think it's doomed to be just another classic tale from the past.
Well, I'm going to be outnumbered here because I don't think she was an Almasty at all. I think she was just an African woman with a lot of disabilities, and got sucked up into slavery, escaped, was found,
I think probably everybody can agree that she was badly mistreated. Badly mistreated, regardless of what sort of human she was.
Yeah.
When you think about it, she's treated, first 3 years she was treated rather brutally, like a slave, and for the rest of her life she was treated like a pet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
but I don't think, even if our DNA and all of that catch up with us and more information comes, like Kevin said, we look at it in different ways, and we still, I don't think we will really know. There's no photographs of her for us to determine, does she look like the picture on the left or the right here? Which more did she look like? If it was more like the long-haired beast on the the left of the photo here, then maybe she was Almasty, But if she didn't, if she looked more like something like this, and they're carried away with their descriptions in the witness statements, then she was just maybe an totally unkempt African woman who was just doesn't look like herself anymore. And we know that can happen from our own homeless today, of how overgrown a person can get in today's society, and not look normal, and then they go and get a makeover and they're like, whoa, there's a person under this mess. We know she slept in the dirt in a hole in the ground. I think there wasn't much up there.
Oh yeah, she couldn't stand being indoors, because it was too hot. Yeah.
So anyway, but great discussion, I thought. Is there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, Leon's got a good one, which I had thought of earlier there. So, because when it was commented that she was like 6 foot whatever tall,
6'7",
I was like,
6'6".
well, if they found her skeleton, how tall was that? Is that an accurate, description that she was that? Is that true?
Well, how else? Well, there it isn't. I didn't find anything about the discussion of how her bones looked, or the bones that were exhumed from next to Kowit. All it said.
one thing
exhumed and a skull extracted. That's the only way I saw.
Right.
You know.
I read somewhere that the skull was crushed.
Yeah, I read that too.
It was in pieces, but who knows?
And then the newest DNA sequencing that they did was making use of the small bones of the ear. Basically, that they recovered material from that, more material from that than they did from the tooth. So they're.
Why is this doing that?
And I think they use that same technique for both the Zana and Quit's skulls. Trying to remember what that term was. Anyway,
it's happening.
So that was the new data with this article was mostly what they discovered when they extracted DNA from the small ear bones or that area of the skull.
Okay. So let me look and see any more questions. Who cares? Did not move the ball at all. Okay.
Well, for your Canadian listeners, that's American for moving the puck down the ice.
It's this one.
Oh my God! Who the hell cares?
Well, personally, my care is that a lot of this, something like this, I mean, with DNA, and for me, it's personal, of course. I mean, maybe you don't care, that's fine. But to me, you could answer, it could just add to more information about the whole evolution and development of all of us,
Yeah. And
it's knowledge, man. That's why I care. I don't even care. I never even considered her myself as being part of the Bigfoot thing. And I know that's what you mean about moving the ball down the field on the whole Sasquatch, what I'm calling hominin X now. But this is something that, hey, on the side for me, this is something that's very interesting. I'd like to know because, like I said, man, it could really shed some light and show us, just give us a little more information on our own origins.
And then also an answer to that fellow's question of who the hell cares. Anyone listening and watching this program right now probably cares. If you don't, go to something else, smart ass.
You heard it here. Oh, wait, I have to get my thing. I'm going to change this around. Right
Well,
here.
folks, you heard it here first on Channel 5 News.
I'm going to change that to say Sasquatch Secrets, but when I get a chance. But still, a great conversation, and we'll never know. We can each have our own opinion, and that's okay because what else are we going to talk about, right? I'm glad I did it, though. I learned a lot about her.
Interesting.
Stuff I didn't even understand, but it's okay. It'll all work out, and I can move all this stuff over now because, good Lord, that's going to take a book itself.
It's like I said earlier. The most frustrating thing about Russian history on this type of subject, they've got a dozen stories like this. The same frustrating non-conclusion. We've got Jacko. That's the only one I know of, an alleged capture of a Sasquatch that could answer the question before the mystery started, and we lost the opportunity. The Russians have like half a dozen of these type stories, and some of them not that long ago.
Add new stuff and new sightings coming out all the time.
New sightings all the time.
New sightings, new video, new crazy video from the middle of Siberia where who knows what happens.
Who knows? Well, gentlemen, that was a great conversation, but let's move on with the rest of the show so we can get people out of here on time.
Show me what you got. Jim, you heard them said, show me what you got. Show me what you got. I want to see what you got. Oh, boy.
Again, I will let people know that the following pictures I have no information about, but people love to post this crap all the time. And I can't remember if this first one we did already.
Oh God.
I think we did, but yeah.
That is associated with one Randy Brisson a long time ago.
Oh, it is? Oh, thank
As far
you.
as I
See,
know,
you learn
yeah.
something all the time. Now I can go back and have a starting point to research that.
Not that he claims to have taken it. He was very vague about it, but he's the one that brought it to my attention. There's another picture allegedly of the same thing, and you could see a man in a jacket reaching out to it, like, I'm one with those of the woods, you know, that kind of crap. Yeah.
When was this? What year? Do you remember?
Oh, shit, 2003. I can't remember.
A while back.
Yeah,
I just want to know if it was something recent or back further.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. Interesting. I've not seen that suit before, though. Mm-hmm. That head.
It was actually a few pictures. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's one
now I've got a project to go look for. They're not even trying anymore, people. What is going on?
That looks like the same costume you see in the Jack Link's commercials.
Yeah. 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 That's crazy. It's just let me move this over. And I thought I'd throw in a little dog man there for you.
Okay, where's the dog and where's the man?
I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking they're seeing a pareidolia face there in between those two trees.
Oh.
Well, on the left side, maybe?
Yeah, on the left side.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it is pareidolia.
Because when I first looked at it, I saw the picture first, so I'm looking around. And then when I saw the comment saying Dogman 2018, I was like, oh, crap. Okay,
well,
then my eyes started looking for a dog.
Well, it's the little bright spot that draws your attention to it, and then your brain forms everything around that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When it's just like a leaf hanging there or something.
Or maybe it's a dog man.
Or maybe it's just a dog.
Or maybe it's a bunch of leaves.
Gosh. And I found hog squatch today.
Hog squatch.
Oh, that's great. That's freaking great.
Yeah, I found hog squatch. They always said he was out there.
Hogs. Wow.
Oh gosh. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of pickings. There was a lot of the stuff that was still around from last week. So
that's pretty good costumes.
That's AI. That's all AI.
I take it this is supposed to be a wildlife trip camera type photo, is it?
Yeah. But it's
right, no information on it or nothing.
Does it have one nostril in the middle of its nose?
Yeah, the AI screwed up and made it like a big hole there.
You got 3 nostrils.
The 3 nostrils. Yeah, 3 nostrils.
Yeah.
Maybe it has 3 lungs.
So it's slim pickings. Up next, we got Bigfoot in the news, and we've got. Have you guys ever heard of the Big Food Tour? Come on, the Big Food Tour. What is Bigfoot? Suddenly, he's everywhere in Abilene. September 16th appearance of comedian Felipe Esparza on his Big Food Tour at the Abilene Convention Center is coming up, and the marquee at the Oasis Spirits and Wine states Bigfoot hide and seek champion since 1924. Displayed nearby are metal cutouts of Mr. Foot at La Via Home Goods. And did you know there's a Bigfoot trail in Potosi? I don't know where that is. It crosses Hog-Eye Road. Seriously, time to pull on size 28. Hey, dudes, and step out. We'll have to ask Eric if he knows where all this is. Maybe he knows. It was just interesting news, people. There was not a whole lot to choose from.
Bigfoot.
Yeah, this is okay. This is the third week I think I have mentioned at the AI experiment off of Instagram. Now they were saying that photo was an alleged photo of 1883 of a Sasquatch.
Mhm. Sure.
But it's all this stuff that's being created by Dan Lyle out of the AI experiment. And even major news sources are starting to have to debunk his photos because he's just released them and they're all over. The people are grabbing them, putting stories on them and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, stories like this picture was found in a jar in my grandfather's basement type stories. It's not.
It was hidden in our safety deposit box.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's
Stuff
that?
like that.
What's that one doing? Performing Shakespeare or something?
Yeah.
No.
It's already
So bad. It's even not even one of the better ones that he has. Seriously, because he's got some that are really cool. And this last one, Bigfoot in Indiana. Wait till you hear this story. So, Indiana Bigfoot Research Organization members say there's more interest than ever in the hairy Sasquatch. This comes out of the Herald.
That's not Indiana picture. That's like,
no, it's sure not. It surely is not. You got me there. Well, maybe the internationally notorious Sasquatch lived in California or Canada, but here in his home state, no way, Leroy said. Our woods are not deep enough. We don't have time. We don't have enough forests. There's no way that there is a 7 or 8 foot creature out there that nobody's seen. That all changed when he attended his first meeting of the Indiana Bigfoot Research Organization over a decade ago. Its founder, Steve Abney, presented evidence that not only is there one hairy forest dweller here, there are thousands.
Whoa.
And Abney claimed to have lived with some of them.
Oh, okay.
Let me repeat that. Abney claimed to have lived with some of them.
Well, then he must have a lot of good footage of it.
No, I have a feeling it's another case. You got to take his word for it.
Oh,
yeah. What does he mean lived with them? Like, were they like in?
That's what it says. He lived with them, and then he makes Leroy says, "Well, it didn't take me long to realize, hey, he's telling the truth."
Well, let's just say in general, in Indiana wooded areas, do they have a black bear population?
Yes.
Well, then they can possibly have a Sasquatch or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or two.
Or two.
Or thousands. I don't know.
Then they showed this print here that Nancy Nail, a member of the Indiana Bigfoot Research Organization, holds. There
used to be a fairly well-known researcher named Doug McCoy from Indiana, who I used to talk with a lot. But when Rennie passed away, I suddenly didn't hear from him all that much anymore. And I don't know if he's still around or he's still active, but he had some interesting castings from Indiana. He's also the one that sent the fake casting to Grover Krantz and thought he caught Grover thinking it's real, and that kind of pulled that kind of a joke on him. But,
well, I wish we looked at the other end. Isn't this the top, the top part of the pour, not the mold? Because that's not the foot part, right? She's holding it opposite.
It looks like it, yeah.
I would like to have seen the other end.
Other than the odd shape, I don't see really many foot details in that casting at all.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I think that's the top part. She needed to flip it for the picture. So here it says, well, on an outing with the group a few years ago, Debbie Sims says she came face to face with a Sasquatch while walking in the woods. The two stared at each other for a minute, then Sims walked away. The experience was so overwhelming, it took the Mooresville resident 3 days before she told the group about the encounter. And yeah, but it just floored me, the whole part about that he lived with them. And then that it doesn't even go into detail. You know,
That's
there's
a
nothing.
big claim, man.
That's the big part, right? So now you guys need to search for this guy in Indiana by the name of Steve Abney. Somebody get him on one of your shows. Okay,
That's a
that
big
do
claim.
encounters. I don't do encounters, so you guys need to get him on so we can judge for ourselves about
Nikki, can you see this picture?
sort of. Yeah. Oh, let me see. Maybe I can move you somehow. Oh, boom, boom, boom. How do I do that?
Let's see that better. I won't mention his name because he wishes to remain confidential. This is the latest tracks found here in British Columbia. They were found on June 8th of this year near Dewar Hot Springs, British Columbia. After examination, my conclusion is they're overlapping bear tracks. But again,
wait, show it again. Show it again, Sam. Okay.
There's a track right there. Oh, right there. That definitely looks like the front paw of a bear to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's offset. If you look at the way the toes are and then the way the heel is, what would be considered the heel? It doesn't really.
And that's the kind of thing that fools people, and they're looking at bear tracks and they think they're looking at something else. I don't blame this man for coming to this conclusion.
Right.
Oh, I've gotten excited.
In case the visible misinterpretation of what you're looking at.
That's how I learned how to find to identify, because I've gotten.
This just occurred last June 8th, 2023. So
I've gotten excited over double bear step quite often myself, actually, because I find a lot of bear tracks out where I go. And sometimes you run across them and you go, "Is that a?" And then now I know enough about them. Now I can look at them and go, "Yeah, no."
Thomas took my spot.
Oh,
give me it back. Okay. What do I got next? Be on the lookout. So, my shindig's coming up, people. It's a week away, before we leave. And
can I ask you a favor? Can I ask you a favor, Nikki? Could you send me that copy of that poster so I can get it printed, so when I go across the border, they'll believe me when I tell them I'm going?
Yes, I'll send it to you. I'll send you. I'll send you one that says special invitation.
Yeah. Every time I go south of the border to a Sasquatch conference or something, the border guard looks at me like he's wondering if I'm telling the truth.
Yeah, we'll get there. Well, because we're so close, folks, and I have a lot to do and to prepare, I don't want to have to worry about doing a show. So there will not be any shows for the next 2 weeks. Okay. I'll be coming on here and there, a gameplay on Friday night or whatever I want to do, but it won't be a Sunday show. Okay, a prep show that I do, because it takes me a long time to get my Sunday shows together, and I don't want to have to worry about that. So they'll just be easy stuff this coming week. Friday show is normal and stuff. And then once Jen and I do go, we're going to try to do lives and put out content for you guys while we're there. We just have to check out, internet situations and stuff like that. So you may not get anything until we, start coming back. But we'll do what we can and see what we can come up with so we can share some of the time that we're out there. We will be filming. Don't worry about that. I think everybody there is going to have some stuff to share with everybody. And it's going to be cool. In 3 days, Nikki will call everyone and say 7 days. Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah. What else? What else are they going to say about that? And now it's time. Is Eyes in the House? Eyes in the Woods is in the house. So now that you're here and you're watching, Uncle Bones would like to present you with something special. He commissioned me to do a wood burning for you in honor of your video of you finding the pine cone that fell. So here it is from Uncle Bones, Michael. For those of you who don't know his name is Michael. This is for you, Miss Eyes in the Woods. And I won't say your name because I know you like your privacy. So here we go. Oh, it's kind of small, huh? Let me put it big. Up. How do I do that? Is that bigger?
Whoa.
That way?
It's pretty small, but it looks pretty cool.
Oh, duh. Why don't I could also show me holding it? It is big. It is bigger. So
Oh, that's nice.
To me,
that's a complex composition.
I'm going to show it a little bit at an angle. It's got Eyes in the Wood at the top. And then it's got Minka, her dog, her German Shepherd, and her walking. Now, I made you a hot booty. And the date at the bottom, walking along the trail. And that, Uncle Bones really wanted me to do it from the video. Of course, there's not going to be you in the video because you don't put yourself in the video. But I actually took a screenshot of the tree and did my best with creative, allowances. Because I can't do it exactly like this because it would be all black. If I burned that, it would just be blackness,
That's awesome, though.
So
yeah,
that is pretty incredible, Nick.
So it's
Nice.
a little while.
And you gave Eyes a hot booty. That's cool.
And I gave Eyes a hot booty. And Minka came out pretty cool too. Could be a little bit darker. I know her German Shepherd's a little bit darker, but once again, I'm working with wood. If I burn too much, you won't see, the differences. So I will get this in the mail to you this week, hopefully tomorrow. I'm going to try to do it tomorrow, Tuesday, before I put a hanger on it. So you can either put it, on a little stand thing or hang it.
Very nice.
There you go.
Very nice.
Cool. That's cool.
I didn't even know that Eyes in the Woods had a gender.
She's a she. She's a she.
Yeah, she's a she.
Where are you guys? There you go. So there you go. Thank you, Uncle Bones, for giving me the faith. He wanted a lot in that picture. His first email to me, he wanted a portrait of you and Minka. And I go, I don't have any pictures of her. She doesn't have an online presence. And normally, I could pull, but I've never done a portrait on wood other than Bigfoot's. Other than these ones. This one.
That one's pretty cool.
And this one. So.
Well, your wood burn has really come a long way from when you started, Nikki.
Yeah.
Really good at it.
I actually went through a tip doing hers. I broke a tip because those tips get so hot that it just snapped.
They get brittle eventually.
Yeah. And so yesterday I had to go buy a new a new tip. But anyway, that is, I believe, all I've got for you gentlemen tonight. Let me make sure that, everything's done here. Yep, that's the final one. So anything going on, Thomas? You got anything going up other than getting ready for the trip?
Well, right now, no, it's kind of quiet here. I haven't had much in report since that alleged track finding in June. We've got a fire problem again this year so far.
Yeah.
No, it isn't as bad as it has been in the past, at least not in the West. In the East, it's terrible. No, it's been, Sasquatch-wise, it's been rather quiet so far in July in this area of British Columbia.
What, Jay? She said wood, Michael, not Woody. I don't know what they're doing. They're talking about something. Well, okay. How about you, Joe? You're taking a break.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what I said in my last show. I'm concentrating on getting back in the field. I mean, I'll pop up here and there probably a little bit as, you know, people invite me to come on and be part of a panel or whatever. But, yeah, I'm pretty much – the channel's still there. It's not going anywhere. I am having some difficulties with it again now, recovering it. But, hey, it still exists. I didn't wipe it out or anything.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to it eventually. But right now, yeah, I'm concentrating on getting back out in the field. I got to.
Good. And Kevin, thanks for coming on and explaining.
Thanks for including me. I hope it made some kind of sense.
Well, maybe. Sometimes I think it does, and sometimes I'm thinking you made me more confused. I don't know. Yeah. It's all good. And
yeah, and I appreciate, Kevin, you're trying to straighten out all that DNA stuff for me, because a lot of that stuff just goes over my head, man. I don't understand it.
I know what you mean. You mean.
And
it's helped me understand a little better, though.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Good to be with you folks on this evening. I really appreciate you including me.
For sure, absolutely. So, hey, everybody, thank you for being here. Make sure to hit that like button before you leave. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Do that thing. Don't forget Steve's show is coming on right now. So watch this and see you in the next